Hi, my name is JJ from Paranormal Talks, paranormaltalks.com. Thank you, YouTube subscribers, for joining us. We love to have amazing speakers who've had near-death experiences and other spiritual transformational experiences. And today we have Mr. Jim Bruton. I'll tell you more about him before we get started, but I just wanted to show you the Paranormal Talks website so you can see more about us, what we're about. Here's our homepage, Paranormal Talks. If you want to know more about us, here's the About Us, Awakening Ourselves First. And here's a picture of me and everything about me. And then we also have a video store. These are some videos from our 2018 Paranormal Supernatural Conference. Everything around the paranormal that you want to see is right here. Near-death experiencers, controlled remote viewing, psychic development, your dream interpretation, etc., etc. So I wanted to show you that. And let me just turn that off, and we're back to this. So that's Paranormal Talks, and that's me, JJ. Now today we have Jim Bruton, and I want to introduce you to him because I'm so excited that he has joined us today. Mr. Bruton, he was an NBC News war correspondent in war zones like Iraq and Afghanistan, and you know how exciting those places are these days. He lived in Africa, and he won an Emmy for his film with National Geographic Television special in Jim, how do you say that?
Namibia.
Namibia, exactly. He won the Yahoo, in addition, he won the Yahoo Site of the Year for Discovery's Titanic Expedition. Then Jim seriously disrupted the news gathering delivery industry. Now, how did Jim do this disruption? Well, he invented the live by video phone system that gathers world news, which is then quickly shot to us where we can see it on our television and on our computer screens. So today, Jim lives in Connecticut with his wife and children, and he brings magic and success to many people's lives. His website is inbetweenproductions.com. And this website came about as a result of his near-death experience. And that's what we'll be hearing today from Jim. Let me show you his website. It's right over here somewhere. Here it is. My Near-Death Experience by Jim Bruton. And he created this in October of 2016. So he died, and he's just been back with us just for about 3 years now, 3 or 4 years. But he'll be showing you more on his website. And feel free to go to it, inbetweenproductions.com, and you can scroll through it. You see this gear here? He'll be telling us more about that gear and how it's a pivotal part in his new life upon his return from death. And here's another photo. Like I said, he worked for NBC in Iran and Iraq. And here's Jim right here with some of his former buddies. So it is the real thing. So there it is. So Jim, thank you so much for joining us, and tell us about your NDE. Tell us more.
Hi, JJ. Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I've been looking forward to this. So yeah, as JJ said, I used to travel all over the world, had a pretty exciting life as it goes. And then one day I met a woman here in Connecticut who was a widow with 3 babies. And I have no idea what happened, but suddenly this started to feel like a good idea. And eventually we married, and I sort of retired from the war business, and I call it the day I joined the circus, which was true. And then very shortly after that, she said, you know, now that you're not traveling so much, why don't you build that airplane you've always been talking about? Because I was always a fan of very early aviation ever since I was a child, and I am a pilot. So I said, you know, you're right. So I set about building a reproduction World War I German fighter aircraft, a triplane, like the Red Baron flew, but not in red. I came up with my own color scheme. And I built it, and I flew it, and then I sold it to a Air Force pilot, and he's having a lot of fun with it. And then I built a second airplane that literally looked like it could have come out of a Disney cartoon. It was a reproduction flying flea from the early 1930s. And kind of imagine a soapbox derby car, but there's a big motorcycle engine in front of your face with a big propeller, and there's a wing above your head and one right behind it. So it's a very, very small aircraft, very whimsical looking. I flew it on, the first test flight was on October 3rd, 2016. I didn't really like the way it handled, so I went back on October 6th, determined to master its quirks, being what I think is a pretty good pilot. It was on that second test flight that I lost my engine, that it quit. And because it was an old design, it didn't glide very well. So when it has no engine, it comes down pretty quickly. I was not able to make it back to my grass strip airfield. So the only place around me because it was forested hills everywhere, was a Boy Scout camp with a lake. And I said, well, I have to aim for the lake. There are no trees there or rocks. Well, I overshot the bank of the lake, and I hit all of these tree trunks. Now, again, imagine hitting those tree trunks in a soapbox derby car at 70 miles an hour, and you have the picture. When I stopped crashing, there was absolutely no plane left around me except the rear part, to which I was still seat belted. It was all pretty much matchsticks at that point. The throttle quadrant I had my hand on is made out of aviation grade steel, and it is bent like a pretzel from me bending it with that crash. And it's not something you could easily bend right now, sitting here calm and collected. So luckily, there was a man fishing nearby because the camp was quiet, the Boy Scout camp, and his name was Greg. Thank you, Greg, because he was able to run over to me and call on his cell phone 911 and sort of keep me propped up where I could try and breathe until the Lifestar helicopter landed. I asked him later, I said, what was going on? He goes, well, you weren't able to talk because you were delirious, but you were also foaming blood at the mouth. And that is because both lungs were ruptured. All of my ribs were broken.
No.
My right leg had multiple fractures.
No.
And I had a hole in my lower back from the airplane battery coming loose and hitting me as a 70-mile-an-hour projectile in my back.
Jesus.
And my chin, the skin was even kind of hanging off, and I couldn't form words. So other than that, I was fine.
God.
So anyway, the helicopter people got there, and they pulled me out of the wreckage and put me on the helicopter and flew me to Hartford's trauma center. And that team, I cannot say enough good about. They are amazing up there. They run it with a military efficiency, just like you would hope they would. And they took me right in. When my wife finally got word from somebody a few hours later and then showed up in Hartford, she found me in a breathing machine with tubes coming in and going out of me in every possible way to keep me alive. And I was a little bit of a handful because I was able to escape the restraints they put me in. And my oldest daughter was there. She totally knew what was going on in my head. She said, I thought like I was in an enemy hospital and they were going to torture me, so I had to escape. I wouldn't have gone 2 feet before I'd fallen over. But anyway, they told my wife, we have multiple days of 6+ hour operations coming up. So we really need to put him into a coma just to make this easy for everyone. So she agreed. So the long and short of it is when they put me into a coma here, I was instantly transported somewhere else. And, to make a long story short, I learned this place was called the Inbetween. And I was just so accepting of the fact of where I was. It wasn't like, oh, I'm having a near-death experience. It's like, no, this is simply where I'm at. And that's the top picture on my website, the one that looks like a post-apocalyptic landscape. Imagine New York City after a nuclear bomb goes off 1,000 years from now, after the bomb, just in that kind of ruins.
Yeah,
And the sky had these huge, dark and heavy clouds over them. I mean, you really felt like I'm on the threshold of annihilation here, whether it's hail or lightning or a tornado or something. And it was just a very strange place to be. I wasn't scared. It was just, this is where I'm at, and this is what it looks like.
It looks pretty bad. It looks pretty bad.
Yeah, it was, and I'm pretty sure I understand why it needed to look that way, essentially so I wouldn't be distracted. Had this been a near-death experience that was beautiful, and, you know, like you could hear beautiful music or see a beautiful landscape or see beautiful crowds of people, I would have been so distracted that perhaps I wouldn't have been as focused on what turned out to be the mission I had. So I'm sitting there looking around, taking all this in, and then suddenly a wave of nausea hits me. And I remember bending over and holding my stomach, and I just thought, and again, I'm not aware of seeing my body, I'm just aware of how I felt. And, you know, no one told me I didn't have a body. But I remember saying, I don't think I can stand this. And when I said that, all of a sudden off to my left, I heard this light clacking of like gears. And I looked over, and this large egg-shaped sculpture, for lack of a better word. And large, I mean 3 to 4 stories high, maybe. But it was made out of this lattice work that was as if it were metal straps or stone straps, something. And I looked at it, and I knew this thing and I are somehow connected. So I, you know, with my stomach in pain, I kind of hobbled my way over to it. And by the way, when I appeared in the in-between, it was up on what it might have been a big skyscraper, on a terrace, and I mean a very large terrace. And I just remember it wasn't on the ground, but it was way up high like that. And everything was gray. The sky was gray. The building was gray. Everything was gray. So I went over and I looked through the lattice work of the egg, and I could see all of these gears inside. And these were a particular kind of gear. I later found out when I came back, called it sector gear. And that's because, you know, when we imagine a gear, we imagine a fully round circle with little teeth all the way around it. A sector gear simply means a section of the gear. So imagine a partial arc of that gear. You see these, and guess what? Clock-like mechanisms. And
timing mechanisms.
Exactly. It goes back and forth. And because of that arc, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. So that sweep and what that sweep is doing in the machine. So and as I looked at them, I noticed some appeared to be more definite. Some appeared to be more ghost-like. And it was nothing for them to just simply pass through each other in their motions. And I reached my hand in, and I touched several, and then I touched one, and I was racked by this intense physical pain. And reflexively, I grabbed it and pulled it out through the lattice work and threw it away. And
even though it hurt, there was pain touching it?
Yeah.
Then you touched it even more?
It was a reflex. It's like, this is the reflex to have to this type of stimulus. And I didn't understand, but I am coming to that. Anyway, I threw it away, and all of the gears now had to recycle around. And that is when I said, what is this thing? And an answer came. And as far as I know, I mean, in this other place, whether it's telepathic or whether you're speaking out loud, I mean, you know, there's no physical mouth to make words. So it just feels one and the same. So, but I guess you could say it was a telepathic communication. Anyway, I said, what is this place? And it said, you are in the in-between. And I said, in between, well, it said, you're in the in-between. And then it immediately said, this is the future birthing into the now. This is the process of becoming. And I said, and then as the machine recalibrated, I said, what's happening now? And it said, each gear is the probability of a thought, word, or action in your future. Your destiny is resetting itself around what you have removed.
Jeez. And that's how it is with all of us, I'm assuming.
Yes. We're always, moment by moment, within a nexus of swirling possibilities around us. And each one of them is just waiting for us to make a choice. And when we choose, it collapses that, to use quantum physics language, it collapses one of those probability waves into a single moment of reality. And that's what now is. That's what living life is. And it said each gear is the probability, and you've now just reset your clock in a way. You are removing things from your future. And I said, how did I know I could do that? Pull that gear out. And they literally said, why else are you here? And I said, I have no idea. I said, I don't even know what this place is. And that's when it said again, you are in the in-between. And I said, in between what? And it said everything, the impossible now, between the past and the future. And I do remember saying that makes no sense. And it said, it's impossible in its short duration. It's as thin, it's thinner beyond imagining, and yet it's expanding across universes. And here you are standing inside the eternity of that single moment. It said, do you remember the world into which, in which your body belongs? And I clearly remembered looking blankly into space with the effort to remember. And I said, I have no idea.
Oh my God, you had no idea of your life on Earth?
Had no memory of this place whatsoever. And to the extent, if someone had come up to me and said, if you stay here any longer, you can't go back, I would have said, go back where? To your family. What family? I'm just going to say it this way. I was depersonalized down to zero. Wow. I was only aware of being a conscious being. But in that moment of being, let's call it being present, no past, no future. There was no attachment at all to anything. I was just in that moment. And when I said, I have no idea, it said, then you see how the past, it said, then you see the truth and how the past is dust.
Oh my God. Oh, okay. To pause there, YouTube, people who are watching this, what Jim just described about not remembering his life on Earth, children, wives, jobs, all of that, that is normal with near-death experiencers. If you listen to 1,000 dead people talk about their death and what it was like when they were in between, or when they were in heaven, or when they were in a place outside their body when they were dead, every one of them will say, what husband, what children? That's normal. And there have been studies, there's been a 50-year study on death experiencers and the typical phenomena that they experience. So just so you know, that's normal. Great. Thank you for reminding us of that, Jim. Go on.
Thank you for that, JJ. That was great. And at one point, I said, why do some of these gears, these futures that I touch, why do some of them make me sick and not others? It said, all choices have unintended consequences, some unfortunate and some not. The pain each brings is your guide. And I said, where are the gears? Kind of like making a joke. I said, where are the gears that feel good? I said, you're not here to feel good.
Oh no!
No, I was there to do work. And I had
what kind of work?
I'm coming to that right now.
Okay.
A new gear then swung into view. Now on this one, and here's the thing: the gears, like I say, I would just feel around, and what I could see, if I could see them, it's as if a video feed played in my head of what they represented. Even though the gear itself may be either kind of in focus or out of focus, like I was saying before. And I have a feeling that the ones that were more definite, the ones that were more in focus, that may have had something to do with how likely they were to actually happen versus something that was perhaps a more remote possibility. Again, kind of just going on gut here.
Makes sense.
And so I didn't get to see a lot of the gears because they were inside the second. I was actually having to kind of reach up high meaning into the future versus present, which was more what was right in front of me right now. And so it literally was by feel. And I'll make a big point about that in a second. But this one gear I did see, I saw a Ferris wheel with happy grandchildren, which I do not yet have, whizzing by, and they were in the car, and they're, I could see their little fingers holding onto the side and laughing, and they seemed to smile at me or through me as they looked off into their own world. Obviously, I let that gear pass by. That's one we keep. More gears emerged within view. Again, some passing through others, and again, whether you could focus on them easily or not, you could still see what they represented. And each time they came to rest, I would reach in and flounder around and find a gear that hurt me, and I'd pull it out and remove it, and it would recalibrate. Well, the idea here is that I was removing things in my future which would be to my spiritual detriment. Let's face it, if you were an alcoholic and you walked to work and you were desperate to never take another drink in your life, you clearly might map out a walk that does not go by any bars. So honestly, somebody asked President Trump about that one time. He doesn't drink, and they said, and it's because he lost a brother. I think he was 42 years old to alcoholism. And someone asked him, he said, "Do you not drink because of your brother?" And he said, "If I never take a drink, I never have to find out." There's wisdom there. Again, whatever your politics are, truth is where you find it. So it's kind of like that. You're basically re-engineering your future for better outcomes. And at some point here, the Inbetween said this incredible statement that summed it all up, and I'll be there in just a moment. At one point, I did turn around and I noticed a growing pile of gears that I was removing. And I said, it's starting to look like if I don't have a bad future, I have no future at all. I said, even though I now feel less pain because I've been doing some house cleaning in my future, if you will, I said, am I going to die sooner from doing all this? I said, your destiny has to fit itself around futures that aren't meant to be. Your number of breaths are already counted. I will worry about your last one.
So it's okay, in a sense, to go ahead and continue to remove those gears, those possibilities, right?
Yes, because in that my number of breaths are counted, whether I can cram more possibilities into that lifespan or there are fewer in that lifespan, in a way saying it doesn't really matter.
Right.
And I just remember him saying, saying, I will worry about your last one. And I really thought how amazing that was.
Nice.
I have some thoughts about that. Anyway, I actually said, I don't know how comforting that is. And I said, eliminating bad choices doesn't mean you won't make wrong ones. You won't know they are wrong or right until after they pass, since right and wrong are variables over which you have no control. Many times, as we know, subject to the whim of a politician's pen, whether, something you do today that's legal, you could be a criminal tomorrow, or, all sorts of things, or when they say, we do things out of good intentions, out of love, and they go off the rails. But bottom line is the answers to what come tomorrow because of that are a waste. Better is understanding the beauty of how everything fits and refits together. This is what I was being told to focus on, that basically everything's under control and you really probably can't muck it up, but we can make it run better. And I said, what am I missing here in my lack of understanding? I said, what is clearly before you? Grace. No one deserves heaven or salvation. It can only be given by grace. It is your birthright, but it must be chosen at the expense of the world that separates us. And then I thought, and I said, this fixing my future is painful, but I feel ashamed that I'm not doing it with some moral compass or, mantra or scripture or something like that. I'm only guided by pain. I said, I don't even know when or where any of this happens. I said, where is no more important than what or when? Removing your enthusiasm to further chain yourself to the world isn't as painful as carrying the crushing weight of those chains once forged around you. I said, it's as if this place were made so that I can do one thing and one thing only with no chance to screw it up. And this is where the Inbetween said the most profound thing to me I've ever heard. It said, if those with choices make poor use of them, then offering fewer possibilities could be called mercy. That still sends waves through me.
Jesus.
And with that, I looked and I watched a deer disintegrate into dust as it passed out of view from the present to the past. And then the Inbetween said, you can't change the past, but you can make better choices in the future. Everything is interconnected, and pay more attention to your relationships. Be gentle with everyone as I am gentle with you. And I said, gentle? What's gentle about all this? And then it said, you prayed for something for which being here is the answer. And now the man who fell from the sky is not the same who flew into it. And with that, I looked up at the stone gray sky and then out across the seemingly dead and abandoned city. I looked back to the egg and I put my hand on it and I said, I think I can live with this now. And that's when I came back. So I came back out of the coma, if you will, timed 1 week away. Or in Earth time, it was 1 week. There, I guess it was a split second, like Planck time, 10 to the minus 44 seconds, something crazy like that. To be honest, I would say it was probably another week after I came out of the coma where I really started to have any memory or cognition at all. I mean, think about it, physical shock, anesthesia, painkillers, the whole thing. Which I find interesting because that 1 week of absolutely no memory, and then 2 days before my crash, absolutely no memory. I went back through my emails and had to find one with the timestamp I remembered as my last email, and it was 2 days before my crash.
Oh, my God.
One of those time periods of absolutely no memory bookend this 1 week period of super consciousness. Who knows? But it's interesting. And anyway, as I came out of it, I had already been moved from the trauma center into a rehabilitation hospital where I was there, I guess maybe 7 weeks. And as I came to, the first thing I really noticed was on the wall, a photograph of me that I'm looking at on my website right now, smoking a cigar with the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan. These guys were fighting the Taliban. This picture was taken right after 9/11. And they were holding up some large, in the metric equivalent, I think it's like 12.6 millimeter, like 50 caliber machine gun rounds. And about 5 minutes after this picture was taken, those rounds were in a machine gun firing at the Taliban that was within shouting distance of us. And my wife had taped this picture up to the wall because this was, her encouraging me, to heal. I had survived these surgeries. My oldest daughter told me that every day the surgeons came out there and said, okay, we've made it through today. Here's what we have to do tomorrow. And so many times they were saying that this has a very low chance of success. I know that my daughter said one time they said it has a 2% chance of success. And she said they actually started the grieving process during that time. They fully assumed that I was not going to make it because the doctor said we could lose him at any time. So it was that much on the rails. And I suffered from acute respiratory failure numerous times. But anyway, what I'll pause for a moment to say one thing that's interesting. Whenever someone who's had an NDE, say really due to a tragic accident, or maybe due to a really bad, like cancer or something like that, or drowning or whatever, it's interesting when we share our story, how that horrible event that delivered us to the NDE becomes a footnote to the story. And I mean that in saying I have no PTSD about flying. I could happily go jump in another little plane and go flying around right now. I don't have that damage.
Yes.
Whereas obviously if we don't have an NDE, we may never want to get in an airplane again, right? Or we may never want to, like we survived lung cancer, we never want to have a cigar again or a cigarette or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's interesting with an NDE.
Uh-huh.
It's part of what puts it all in perspective,
Yes.
and we almost say it was worth it. And I can certainly say in my case it was, and I'll come to that point in a moment when we take a break. So anyway, I looked at that picture though, and
Uh-huh.
while yeah, a lot of people would look at that picture and say, "Wow, that's a man's man. He's doing manly things, and
Oh, yes, yes.
it's a cool thing." I just looked at it and thought, "That's not who I am anymore."
Ah, so you already knew that you were a different person
Yeah,
because you had done so much work on that egg lattice with all those possibility gears in it that you'd pulled out. You reconstructed yourself. So you came
you,
back to the same body, the same broken body that was being fixed up and stitched
yeah,
together, but you were way different now.
you summed that up perfectly, JJ. It's as if you're reprogramming. Reboot.
Yeah.
Now we've got version 2.0. Um,
It's a different well, and with some people, with possession, or someone dies or whatever, it's called a walk-in.
yeah, yes,
A lot of near-death experiencers, we could say, are walk-ins
yeah,
because the soul returning is way different than the one who left. It's basically like being in grade school,
hmm
and you died in grade school, and then during your death in heaven or in the in-between, you graduated from college, you got your PhD, you wrote and published your dissertation, and now you come back to that same body as a 3-year-old. It's
you
that
got it.
sort of change. It's that massive.
And
So no wonder why when a near-death experiencer returns to their broken body,
mm,
generally, sometimes, no wonder why they have such a radical change in their career, and their relationships, and
true,
their life philosophy.
you
What else
got
can you expect? A 3-year-old compared to a PhD graduate?
it.
What do you expect?
It's
Okay.
totally true. And think about the added wrinkle. You don't, other than you're maybe in the hospital, you don't really look any differently than you did before. So you're not going to get a lot of sympathy. If
And
you came
that's
back,
the fake out.
yeah, if you came
That's
back and you
it's
were green and you
it's
had horns or you had
it's
multiple eyes and
bad.
you could prove that, hey, I can
Yeah.
see in the dark now or something, people might go, yeah. But, to most people, it's like, snap
Yeah.
out of it, give us the real, in this
Right.
case, give us the real Jim back anyway. But
Right. Right. Yeah.
that really comes to bear during the integration phase, which is a little later on.
Uh,
Right now,
mhm.
in terms of this picture and the obvious distinction and feeling of this is who I was but not who I am, I realized, to my wife, that's the best version of myself. What is the best version of myself now?
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say the best version of myself was the humbled, depersonalized, in
Mm,
pain, conscious
mm.
being over on the other side.
Ah.
As uncomfortable a place as it was to
Mhm.
be,
Mhm.
I came to realize in short order that if I was called to go back over there to continue the work that I started,
Mhm.
I would go in a heartbeat.
Hmm.
And that brings about some other interesting realizations. Like I said, instinctively, I felt that this is the better version of me, that depersonalized conscious being in the in between, stripped of everything,
Yeah.
neither joy or sorrow, but flowing down that main axis of equanimity between the ups and the downs, the joy and
Mhm.
sorrow that people chase or try to avoid. And that flow of being in the impossible now beyond time was discovered through a perfect state of letting go
Hmm.
because there was absolutely no attachment whatsoever.
In a perfect state of working really hard in the in between. Now, if you'd like to tell us more, we'll have a part 2.
Sure. Yes, I can
Okay.
definitely. Yes, we can do that. We can pick right back up on that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, YouTuber, thank you for joining us. We'll be right back. Thank you so much from Paranormal Talks. See you next time.